I'm the Executive Director of CPAWS. CPAWS is also a bit of a mouthful. The Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, Nova Scotia Chapter. We're a conservation organization. Our role is to create parks and protected areas. And I've worked to try to protect the lands where we're going today for 25 years. So I know this area really well today, and MTRI asked us to join and to be guides for today. So happy to do that. Forest, as far as you can see. Most of this is in the protected area, so this is protected. It's always going to be like this. The name Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes, it's a long name, but there's Blue Mountain and there's Birch Cove Lakes. Birch Cove Lakes is on this side of the city, which are the lakes that's closest to the city where there's a lot of use and a lot of interest with the National Urban Park, for instance. Blue Mountain is located further back, so it's in this direction. And Blue Mountain is actually the highest point of land nearest the city. And if you get up to the top of Blue Mountain, you actually have a 360-degree panorama. So you can see a long way from up there. It's not that much higher than where we are right now, but there's fewer trees at the top of Blue Mountain. It does actually feel like the top of a larger hill. From there, you can see some of the taller buildings and bridges sort of downtown Halifax. You can see as far as the Aspetuagan Peninsula, which is the piece of land between St. Margaret's Bay and Mahone Bay. You can see planes landing at the airport, which is like 30 kilometers in this direction. And then you can see various little towns and windmills and stuff from different communities. So you're actually seeing a very large area around the city. And so this is kind of like the baby hill, but gives you a perspective of the landscape. Rolling hills, forests, intermittent lakes, steep ridge lines that have steep drop-offs. That's very typical of this area. The rock itself is metamorphosed sandstone. It's from the Maguma group, which is rock that was actually formed off the coast of Africa about 360-ish million years ago. And then because of plate tectonics, continents sort of collided, a little piece of the continental shelf of Africa near Morocco stuck to North America, and that became this rock itself. So there's an interesting natural history story here as well about how these rocks form. And of course, when those continents collided, that's when the Appalachians were created, and there were large mountains. So these are sort of the leftover rocks from the mountains that have been eroded over time. The whole area has been glaciated, so it's harder to see on these rocks, but there are different striations in the rocks. Those are from glaciers. So 11,000 years ago, there would have been an ice sheet right where we're standing, where the ice would have been a kilometer thick. So imagine a kilometer up of ice at this location. Glaciers move across the landscape. They're kind of like fluid. And that ice, where it makes contact with the ground, sometimes there's rocks. And those rocks sort of scrape across the bedrock. So some of these lines, not all of them, some of them are just cracks, but other lines are the striations from the large glaciers that were here a long time ago. If you move this way, the bedrock changes. So this is the metamorphosed sandstone. As you go that way, you come into a very large plume of granite. So if you've been to Peggy's Cove, just large granite, smooth rocks. The lakes, most of the lakes in Blue Mountain, Birch Cove Lakes are like that. So big rocky outcrops of granite. It looks a little bit different than this area, which is more steep ridge lines sort of stacked against each other. So the wilderness sort of transitions from this direction as you move further into the wilderness. That piece of granite actually is the same piece that is Peggy's Cove, but it extends all the way down as far as Keshemakujik. So a lot of the granite that MTRI would be doing their field research on is the same piece of rock that comes all the way to Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes. Some of the ecosystems here on these exposed headlands are shrub-dominated systems. So this is crowberry and Petrum nigrum, which is Nova Scotia has some of the best examples of this type of ecosystem in the world. It's globally significant. As you get closer to the coast, these type of ecosystems become more prevalent. So we're a long way from the ocean here, but that's only thinking like a Nova Scotian, right? So a couple kilometers from the ocean, that's a long way. But we're still influenced. You can sit on this rock and watch the fog roll in the summertime. It comes in this direction off of St. Margaret's Bay. There is still an ocean influence here, and these ridge lines sort of pick up some of that. So you are getting these sort of coastally influenced shrub-dominated ecosystems. The sharper shrubs down here, this is juniper. but it's a low growing version, like a juniper horizontalis. And they form these large clusters. Some of these shrubs are very old, like decades old. They grow very slowly in an outward, slow growing form. Yeah, and then as I said, huckleberry is the dominant shrub through most of this wilderness, and it's quite lovely in the fall. Things look a little bit different here than a lot of the other forests. So that's because this is a red pine dominated stand of forest. You see the pine trees, like basically all these trees are red pine. They're bushier, and they just look more like, I don't know, southern, more tropical than a northern species. And that's because it is. It's typically much farther south. In Nova Scotia, where you see red pine, usually it's because it was planted. It was a plantation. So you'll have straight rows of red pine trees, and that was something that was done for forestry, I don't know, the 1930s, 1960s. A lot of those stands, they're not like this at all. The trees are all the exact same age because they were planted on the same day. So this is a natural stand of red pine. So you have some older trees, some younger trees, and it is regenerating here. And part of what makes it interesting is that this species is right at its northern limit right now. And so it has a hard time with our winters and germinating in colder conditions. So where you typically find red pine are only in very specific locations. And that's one that has lots of rocks usually, because the rocks catch the sun and then it warms up the soil. So the soil doesn't get as cold at nighttime. And quite typically where there's a southern exposure. So southern exposure, again, the soils warm up quicker, which helps with germination. So this stand has a southern exposure across the lake. So that sun, when it comes out in early spring, warms up the soils here much earlier than on that side of the lake or in places that don't have a southern exposure. So because of these sort of micro conditions, red pine can survive here. And it's actually a fairly large stand. And so one of the reasons why we want to expand the protected area at this location is because it adds this really nice stand of red pine tree to the protected area. A stand like this doesn't occur in other parts of the wilderness.